you for coming this afternoon. We are going to have a three-person panel here today. First, I wanted to mention how I first got to meet Jeanette. So I was doing this history project, and I was looking through all the digitized newspapers on newspapers.com. And of course, I had to check the Hardin County Independent, which has been, it's got a pretty extensive record on there, and they upload pretty regularly. So I was going through, and of course, I was looking up all the keywords. I was looking up lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgender, seeing anything that would pop up for the last 30 years or so. And of course, most of the stuff that popped up was hate hate speech and hate preachers, that kind of thing. But I got one positive hit, and that was an article that was sent to the Hardin County Independent of your election.
Yeah. I sent it. I wanted kids to get to read something positive about themselves. Yeah.
It happened. Yeah. So I got to look at that, and I thought, Jeanette Oxford, what are the chances?
Yeah.
What are the chances that in Hardin County that maybe we're the same one, right? And so I asked my dad, I said, do you know a Jeanette Oxford? And he said, yeah. And I said, how's Jeanette related to us? And he said, oh, I think a cousin or something like that. And I said, and you never told me? That's like, we got a celebrity in the family. That's really awesome. So I decided to get in contact with JMO, and this was on Facebook, and then we ended up having a phone call pretty shortly afterward. And I get to hearing about this project that y'all were doing out in St. Louis, that exhibit. What's the name of that exhibit?
Gateway to Pride.
Gateway to Pride. And so when we went out to St. Louis, we got to actually see that exhibit. And I saw you included in that exhibit among some of the most amazing stories. And so I ended up getting to meet Jeanette that very same day. So the first time I got to meet you was in that exhibit, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah, Juniper's grandfather is my father's brother. That makes Juniper my first cousin twice removed.
Yes. Yeah, so my grandfather is your first cousin.
Yeah.
I think that's how that works. So yeah, we got to talking, and then I was like, as we were having that phone call, as we were having that conversation, Jeanette had said, I spoke at SIU before. And I was like, when did you speak at SIU? So what you hadn't known was amidst that time, I was trying to get all the History Month posters that we've had since we officially started with SIU. And so your name pops up. And the one that I had a really hard time finding, I ended up having this whole center retrospective with the renaming that we had last year. And your year that popped up, 2005, was the one that was folded up and put in the archive in some obscure location. And we ended up getting it for that. It's got like lettering that looks pretty Simpsons-esque. And so, but there it was, plain as day. I saw your name for the keynote. And so I thought, well, we got the wonderful Rodney Wilson last year for our keynote for the 30th anniversary. I said, we need to get another Missourian out here for the 20-year return, 2025, right? And so I had that conversation with Jeanette when I was up in St. Louis, and I got to see that exhibit. And wonderfully, Z said yes. So I was very, yeah, very thrilled. Thank you for,
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
yeah.
And it's the great grandfather, not her grandfather. That's my father's brother. I tracked it down now. Okay.
That's right. That's right. So, we get to talking, and I start hearing about the really wonderful involvement that Representative Marty Murray and Elizabeth Fuchs
Fuchs.
Fuchs has been up to in Missouri, doing some really, really important work. And we were excited to get the opportunity to invite them here to talk about that experience and talk about their advocacy together, and the importance of racial justice and queer justice coming in together. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. So I was here in October of 2005. I had just been sworn in as a state representative in Missouri, the first out lesbian to serve in the Missouri General Assembly. There'd been one out gay person before me, Tim Van Zandt from Kansas City. He had not run as an out man, but he came out after he was in office. So I ran as an out person. I went to a candidate school with the Victory Fund, and they said, if you've ever been out anywhere, you better run out because somebody will out you. And if somebody else tells people that you're LGBT, then what people say to you is, you lied to me. Well, no, you didn't lie. You just hadn't brought this up yet, right? But people will accuse you of lying if you're not the one that outs yourself. So I ran with the out stuff on my literature, like other candidates do. I talked about my wife, Dorothy, and the church we go to, things that people say on their campaign literature, just like other candidates. And I lost in 2000 against the governor's son by 64 votes, but 4 years later, I won in a three-way primary and served 8 years in the Missouri House. Thankfully, I was not thank you. I was not the last out person to serve in the Missouri House. There have been, I think, 16 of us. In 2007, Jolie Justice became the first out lesbian to serve in the Missouri Senate. And then in the House, we had Mike Colonna, then Zach Wyatt, who was the first Republican to come out while in office. Randy Dunn, the first African-American legislator to come out. Tom Hannigan, lovely guy. He died way too young of complications of his diabetes. Greg Razor was elected to the House and later served in the Senate. And so he's the only out person who's served in both chambers so far. Ashley Bland Manlove from Kansas City, the first African-American female legislator. Ian Mackey, Phil Cristofanelli, Jamie Johnson. And then that brings us up to this last election. And there's a whole crop, right, Elizabeth?
That's right.
I think this is the biggest number of people who've served out together. So we've got Elizabeth Lilly Fuchs, who you see on the screen up there.
Thanks.
Jeff Hales, Jeremy Dean, and Wick Thomas, the first out gender non-binary legislator. I asked Wick to come, but Wick needed to be, Wick is from Kansas City and needed to be with the Kansas City Council today for something very important. So that just did not work out. So 16 people, that's great, but it's not that great, right? Because there's 163 House members and 34 Senate members. And if over the last like 30 years, we've only had 16 out people, that's just way too few, isn't it? So what are you going to do about that? Marty and I are both graduates of SIU. We are Salukis. And we hope this convinces you that even if you move to another state to get a job later, you can run for office there and win. Because I wasn't a native Missourian, but I'd been living in St. Louis for a while and doing good work on poverty issues, and people had started to know me. I especially got known because I fought spending tax money on building a new Cardinal Stadium. I started a group to fight that, and people loved that issue because guess what? People don't want to spend their tax money for baseball, football, ice hockey team millionaires and billionaires who can afford to build stuff like that out of their profits, but they make us pay for it. So it's an issue where the public will be with you if you ever want to fight on that one. I'll tell you that. When I was here in 2005, I offered 5 things that I'd learned living here in Carbondale because this was such a wonderful community for me to live in. And I'll say those again to you now because I believe them still. First, community is dependent upon individuals and small groups who have gifts of hospitality, the ability to welcome, to open up space for others, to create a feeling of home wherever they are. And some of you are here. Paulette, you created a feeling of home for me. Deb, you created a feeling of home for me. Yeah. Folks from Church of the Good Shepherd, I just met one back here, Kathleen. Good Shepherd was home for me. And that just was so important. Secondly, a vibrant cultural life nourishes community, teaches a code of common values, educates and mobilizes action. So we had, dances. We had a big Halloween thing every year. We had the first women's basketball game. People genuflected when that was going on. So, some of us went off to the Michigan Women's Music Festival together. There were things that we did that made for a vibrant cultural life. Movie festivals. It was a wonderful place culturally. Bands, etc. When diversity is seen as a strength and a gift, not merely a challenge, all parts of the community develop. Fourth, a calendar or a rhythm of regularly anticipated events and rituals helps to establish community identity and a feeling of belonging among members of a community. We had a lesbian potluck that was one of those regularly occurring things for me that really grounded me and gave me a whole lot of strength and happiness. And then finally, communities help members face their fears and grow to their full potential. I talked about how, as part of the Speakers Bureau of lesbian and gay folks on campus, I got to practice courage because I was young and I hadn't done much scary stuff yet. And so we would have Blue Jeans Day. Anybody remember Blue Jeans Day? Yes. And we'd say, if you're gay, wear your blue jeans. And then people were like, oh, well, do I have to do laundry and have some khakis or what here? So it made people think a little bit. And we'd get out on the quadrangle or whatever it's called and have little speeches and stuff. And it was a chance to practice courage and help me face a lot bigger things since then. Carbondale, I just owe you all a lot. It was a wonderful place to live. A lot has happened since 2005, and some of it very positive and things that I did not see happening. While I was a state rep, I got to go to the Obama White House for a Pride celebration. Wow. Who would have thought that you'd have LGBT folks dancing in the Obama White House to the Marine Corps jazz band? I mean, it was just a wonderful thing. Some of you, especially if you're connected to Good Shepherd, know that there was a fight over whether I could be ordained in the United Church of Christ. I didn't wind up getting ordained, but the fight about me mattered, and lots of my friends who are LGBT have been ordained since, including my wife, Dorothy, who was ordained in 2008 and just retired after about 20 years as a hospice chaplain. I was able to marry my wife, Dorothy, legally in 2014 in Illinois. We came to Illinois because we're like, it will be a cold day in hell before Missouri ever legalizes this. So we better go to Illinois if we're going to get married. So we got married over in the Fairview Heights area. It was still I'm up for having a better day, but it's the best day of my life so far. It was the day I got to marry Dorothy. Didn't think that was going to get to happen. I recognized something new about myself because young folks taught me that gender is not binary. And I've started to understand something about myself that anytime I was in a room and it was like women line up here and men line up there, I wanted to form another line. I didn't feel like I fit in either place. And I realized that in my head, I am gender non-binary. I am a human being. I'm agender. Is how I identify, and I've been using the pronouns Z and Zers since about 2018. So lots of new and positive things have been happening. I'm actually getting an award for gender non-binary visibility from St. Louis University next Friday. So yeah. But it's not all been good news over the last 20 years, has it? The last 12 years have especially been hard, and the danger is escalating. And I'll just name two things that are especially spooky right now. On January 20th, President Donald J. Trump, that's a scary sentence within itself. On January 20th, President Donald J. Trump issued Executive Order 14168 called Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government. Let's all wash our mouths out. Withdrawing federal recognition of transgender people and a series of additional executive orders has continued the ongoing assault on transgender people. I should have brought a music stand. particularly targeting transgender military personnel, athletes, and others across various spheres of public life. Just horrible, horrible, horrible. On May 14th of this year, the Missouri Senate voted to move House Joint Resolution 73, HJR 73, to the ballot in Missouri, and that'll be on our ballots next year in 2026. HJR 73 creates a state constitutional amendment to ban abortion in Missouri. We did a petition initiative to put it on the ballot to make abortion legal, and we won. But they didn't like that. And so they have put this thing on the ballot to, again, ban abortion as a constitutional amendment, but they don't say plainly what they're doing. When you go to the polls, you won't know that's what you're voting on. It'll just be sort of like, we're going to change these lines, but it won't say what it does is makes abortion illegal again. What it will do is tell you that it bans gender affirming care for young folks. So they're using trans kids as ballot candy to attract yes votes on an abortion ban. How cynical and sick and twisted is that? Just terrible. LGBTQ people are in the news every day, with many lies being spread through social media. The threat to transgender folks is the loudest at the current time. And so this year I've decided I need to model what I believe. So when Juniper asked me, I said, I'm not coming alone. I want people to come with me. Don't go alone. There was a wonderful lawyer, an organizer named Florence Kennedy, Flo Kennedy, who had the slogan, don't agonize, organize. And she's one of my role models. You might enjoy looking her up. Her name is spelled with a Y, Florynce, Florence Kennedy, if you want to read about somebody fun. She liked to make white people nervous by wearing a cowboy hat and pink sunglasses. I just think she's a pretty cool person. So she urged us to organize, and I think we have to do that intersectionally across lines of race and ethnicity and income and religion and gender and other human characteristics that too often have been used to keep us apart. So tonight I'm here with Representative Elizabeth Lilly Fuchs and Representative Marty Joe Murray, both from St. Louis. We're going to be sharing some stories with you about ways that we've been working together, and we hope that will inspire you to do the same. And we also want to dialogue with you, so we're going to save lots of time for Q&A because that can be really our favorite part. We're trying to move the United States toward realization of liberty and justice for all. We've never got there as a country yet. As you know, we're on stolen land that was taken through genocide and settler colonialism and built through chattel slavery and further shaped by decade after decade of Jim Crow laws. So it's absolutely vital if we're ever going to have liberty and justice that we keep working on it. On the way down here, I listened to Iris DeMent's new album. It says, we're working on a world we may never see. I highly recommend that song. I may not get to see it, but I believe if we work on it today, it will come true. We can be ancestors of a better future. So let me just hush up. We'll let Marty, Joe, and Lily introduce themselves to you, and then we'll start to tell you a few stories and then see what you want to talk about. So why don't you go next, Lily?
You got
Okay.
a lady from the Lou.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. JMO, thank you very much for including me today. And thank you to Juniper. Hello. Rep Murray, good to see you. Hi to everyone in the audience. Funny, coincidentally enough, I know somebody there. And so, hi. I got a DM like, hey, I'm in the audience with you. So I love it. Just wanted to give a shout out. So just a little bit about me. Elizabeth Fuchs, I use Lily and I use she, her pronouns. Born and raised in St. Louis, lifelong Missourian, generations of my family from St. Louis and from Missouri. And, I wanted to just kind of ground into a little bit about Missouri and LGBTQ policy to kind of expand on where JMO started us. There's a big difference in red and blue state energy right now. I think the Gen Z in my life call them vibes, like there's a real difference in vibes right now. And so the stories and what we might kind of talk about, and I think JMO framed it well in the kind of the federal policy and legislation that we're looking at and the state policy, it's a lot. So I just want to ground us in vibes and know that there's some differences in the red state, blue state, kind of what we're living under. And how I got into this work is really important part of this and recognizing my role. I'm a white, cisgender, queer activist advocate. And in Missouri, as Rep Murray and I will kind of talk about later, we kind of play these roles. But I really want to just kind of frame that where JMO left us with the um, reshaping of, well, the shaping of this country with Jim Crow laws. Like we're really looking at the Confederacy in charge here again in Missouri and how that is going to frame this conversation and how that helps you understand kind of our roles and the roles that we play in the legislature. And my work and my mission is really centered in today. Today, actually, 35 years ago, was one of the most important days, if not one, probably the most important day of my life. And it was when my dad's youngest brother, I'm from a big Catholic family. Um, One of my dad's youngest brothers had AIDS. He was 30 years old and he died by suicide. And it was 1990. So we didn't have a lot of policies really helping people living with AIDS or HIV. And so that's kind of how I have come into this work. And I really see the connection between how the federal and state policies, the laws that are being passed, the rhetoric, the stigma, the way they're going after trans folks really looks to me a lot like what was happening in the 80s. And so that frames me. I'm this generation of warriors, and I'm really grateful to be here. And I look forward to our discussion.
All right, thank you, a lady from the Lou. Hi, everyone. Representative Marty Joe Murray. As JMO was saying, it's a tremendous honor for me to be able to be back on campus. So I am a former Saluki. I guess you're always a Saluki. I don't know about former Saluki. But I went to school here. I graduated in 2011. I studied business, Rain Hall, Lawson. Walking back on campus, it felt so familiar. I'm just itching so I can get over to Don Taco before the volleyball game tonight. So it's a tremendous honor for me to be back on campus. When it comes to advocacy and like, me running in Jeff City or running in St. Louis, I'm originally from Chicago. So for me to come in to that space, bow tie in hand, thinking I'm about to change the world at like, what high school did you go to? Are you even from here? So to JMo's point, you certainly can make a difference no matter where you come from. And with Missouri being as red as it is, as dangerous as it is, our little blue island of St. Louis oftentimes have to use a megaphone to try to articulate the views and opinions that we have. And I just want you all to stay grounded in that, just understanding how important your voices are. Like, yes, we're the ones that get to punch the box and vote yes, no, or present, but you all being active, you all being in the community, making your voices heard, writing letters. I don't know about Lily, but I always read, emails, letters, whenever people testify, like I use that testimony when I'm debating on the mic. So even as, you know, people are going back and forth, I'm reading the emails and notes that people have written in about how they feel about issues. So I think that stuff is just always important to be active. And to Lily's point, for me, I'm an ally. So, me being a cisgender, heterosexual black man, showing up in that building, I find that people they speak differently, right? Like if Representative Wick Thomas were to go into an office or sit down with the speaker, people try to guard themselves in terms of how they might interact with Wick. Whereas when I walk into those spaces, they are unfamiliar with how I might receive it, right? Because I don't necessarily wear it or I don't show it in a way that they will have to feel guarded. So oftentimes I get the unfiltered view on terms of how they might feel about transgender laws, how they might feel about the LGBTQIA plus community. But from there, I can have a real conversation to say, hey, just because someone looks or presents a certain way doesn't mean that for me that we're not on the same page. And and oftentimes I've been able to see that we can have real conversations, right? And I know looking on the headlines, looking on the news, President Trump will always try, like you say, use transgender youth as a punching bag right out the gate. I mean, we got orientation, we got sworn in, and I think immediately we were starting to hear bills about banning transgender women or girls from being able to play in sport, participate in sports. And it's just like ridiculous how they will use those type of tactics, those aims to invigorate their base. You know, they might not even care about the issue at hand. They probably never even met a transgender person, or at least to their knowledge that they would know. Um, but yet they will push this dangerous legislation that hurts communities. And for us, it's like, you know, so many people in St. Louis can completely can be themselves and will wear that. And for us, it's like you're harming my community, and I need you to understand that. So I think, you know, when we talk, you know, the core of our conversation tonight being intersectionality, I'm definitely looking forward to being able to share some of the perspectives of like how Lily, Wick, and I and our caucus have approached it. Because I do think through all of the chaos and the danger that we were able to get some win. So looking forward to talking about it.
Well, I'm real glad to be here with Marty and with Lily. Um, Lily and I are going to first tell you about a time when I wasn't in office and she wasn't yet either, that we got to do some intersectional organizing. I was executive director of a group called Empower Missouri, which is one of the oldest social justice organizations in Missouri, maybe the oldest. It was founded in 1901 as the Missouri Conference on Charities and Corrections, and was known as Missouri Association for Social Welfare for decades until rebranding as Empower Missouri in 2014. But in 2017, Missouri was trying to weaken its human rights codes, and they wanted to make it harder to sue for discrimination based on disability or race or gender, et cetera. And so Senate Bill 43 was being debated. And I worked for Empower Missouri, and we were opposing the bill because we thought that it's hard enough to win a discrimination case already. Making it harder, uh, especially traps low-income people who sometimes don't have a lot of job mobility to get to a better and safer place, can trap you in a really a dangerous workplace or a hostile kind of workplace environment. So we were opposing the bill, and so was Promo. So at the time, Lily worked as the what was your title, Lily?
Manager of Public Policy.
Yeah, for Promo, which is our state LGBT civil rights lobby in Missouri. And so we were in the hearing room, and I can't remember if we had testified yet, but both of us testified against the bill. But Nimrod Chappell Jr., the state president of the Missouri Conference of NAACP, went to testify against the bill. And within a sentence or two, he said, "This is a Jim Crow law." And Chairman Land cut off his microphone and wouldn't let him finish his testimony. And when the ranking Democrat on the committee, maybe Gina Mitten, if I'm remembering that right, Lily, tried to ask questions, or I can't remember for sure who it was, but they raised their hand. And one of the only powers you have in the minority caucus is the power to ask a question in a committee. And the chairman wouldn't recognize the ranking Democrat to even ask a question of Rod Chappell. And so, Lily, take it from there. What did we do about it?
Well, after our shock and disbelief, that the mic had actually been cut off, because I think when these things happen at first, you're like, oh, that didn't just happen, or you're waiting for it to come back on. You're like, oh, okay, it's just a glitch or something. They didn't actually cut off his mic, right? And I'd like to think I was even more, I don't know, kind of unfamiliar with their ways and was like, oh, this isn't actually happening. No, it was happening. So, because before that, we had both gotten to testify and everybody else had gotten to give I think at the time you noted in the press release that there were 5 minutes to speak, which that's a lot of time for testimony, which was also generous, and that's changed a lot. So now we get 3 minutes for testimony. So we'd all had our time. So when they cut off President Chappell, we were really mad. I remember being really mad. So we organized. What was the quote? Don't agonize, organize. So that's what we did. I didn't know. Like, the other part of this is, JMO I don't think I have given you enough of your flowers for kind of paving this way because I was brand new. You had been in the building. I can remember being a youth with Growing American Youth, like a mentor, and going past your office and being like, okay, kids, this is like our first out lesbian. It's like a big deal. And so then
Oh,
you're there as the executive director, and I don't think I would have known what to do. So this is also like intersectional work, but also intergenerational is also really important because you like said, okay, we're gonna have a press conference. I wouldn't even have thought to have a
We went
press
to Ruby Tuesdays, had a salad bar, and plotted uh, doing a press release later that night, like making a statement together.
Yeah, making a statement, doing a press conference, but it was over Ruby Tuesdays, coupons and salad bar at Ruby Tuesdays up on Missouri Boulevard near Jefferson City in our capital, which is where the capital is in Missouri. And then yeah, the next day there was a press conference where we talked about it. I think I was thinking about this because the bill sponsor was Gary Romine, and that the reason he introduced this law to begin with, or this bill, was because he owned some rent-a-centers or some sort of company where he didn't want to rent to people. There were certain people in the town that he didn't want to rent to, and I guess he'd gotten in trouble. So he got this bill to get passed so that you don't get in trouble for it.
And that's normally called a conflict of interest, but people don't get busted about it way too often. And that was one of those cases. So we did have a big press conference. There were a bunch of other lobby days happening the next day. The NAACP was already coming the next day for a lobby day. So we had a lot of folks from there. We had the reproductive justice folks come to our press conference. We had religious voices come to the press conference. We had labor union folks come to the press conference. So we did great intergenerational and intergenerational and intersectional organizing on making a statement. Got some good media out of it. Unfortunately, that law did pass, and Missouri has lost over $600,000 a year of federal money for fair housing because of no longer having state human rights code that matches federal code, basically. So sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but it's really important to have the fight, because if you have the fight, you can keep building your base so that you grow the numbers that you need to eventually win on the issues that you want to win on. So don't just lay down, always fight it, but fight it smart and fight it intersectionally. What are some things that happened this year? This was a particularly hideous legislative session, and next year looks like it's going to be even worse. And it ought to be, because I'm not a particularly partisan person, and that my hope is in movements, not in parties. But the Democrats really do need to pay back the Republicans for what they did this year, because they shut down debate on paid sick days for low-wage workers, the being able to have earned sick days. They repealed that we passed. The people voting, 57% of us, more than 57, almost 58, voting to create paid sick days, and that was taken away through ending a filibuster through calling the previous question a technical move that's not as seldom used in the Senate. That happened, and this abortion ban thing all happened in one day, May the 14th.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so just for like some context, right? Because I feel like having, come from Illinois, like, watching things in Springfield, seeing politics in Chicago, it felt different. Like, it's like the vice president said, these, I'm not gonna say the word because my daughter's in the room, are crazy. And
Yeah.
it's really that bad. So like in our chamber, we're in the House of Representatives. So I think it's 109, correct me if I'm wrong, 109 Republicans, about 51 or 52 Democrats, 51 Democrats, and it takes 82 people to get a bill passed in our chamber. So just from there, like when it comes to them moving to previous question, which is like a motion that you can make that just essentially says, we've said everything we need to say on this topic. Let's actually vote on it. Let's move on. But if you don't even have enough numbers to where you could vote that down, they can automatically just ram everything through. And to their point, they try to just, in the House at least, they don't care about debating. They don't care about hearing us. They don't care what our constituents have to say about the issue. even given the fact that our city represents 40% of the GDP of the state. So when you talk about, I think some of the more dangerous things, when we talk about intersectionality, our ability to pass things in law and through the Constitution, through the initiative petition process is paramount. And that's what we saw them come after. And that's what JMO was referring to at the end of session, where they want to make it to where and this is like the special session, but like make it to where if you want to go get, initiative petition, you want to go get signatures to change the law, say we want to bring back gender affirming care, or we want to codify equal or same sex marriage in the Constitution. You right now, well, yeah, I guess right now, because it's not actually, we have to vote on it. You can go get the signatures, 50% plus one, and it becomes a law of the land. They're trying to make it to where it takes 8 out of 8 of our congressional districts all to vote for it. So we can have a scenario where everybody in Missouri, like literally every person in Missouri, Kansas City, all come out and say yes, but one congressional district, 10 people can come out and say no, and it fails in the entire state. I think they just got frustrated because, we sat there, we passed legalization of marijuana, which brought billions of dollars of revenue, got rid of right to work. We increased the minimum wage. We codified paid sick time.
Made abortion legal.
Abortion legal. I mean, we've done so much. I
Yeah.
always say everything that we've done positive in the state of Missouri has been through initiative petition process.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they're like, we're going to come after that.
Oh, and we made healthcare available to over 300,000 low-wage workers
Jeez.
through Medicaid expansion.
Medicaid
by-
expansion.
By petition initiative as well.
Yeah.
Cannabis, medical marijuana,
Yeah.
Yeah.
recreational.
So I guess that's like the biggest negative thing.
Right.
I mean, obviously we see like the attacks because one thing that people don't realize is when we are in that building, what comes across on a TV screen or in the newspapers isn't always the reality. Because sometimes they'll have things that they'll say, like the speaker will say, okay, they're talking about it, the press is writing about it, but we know that it's never going to actually pass. Sometimes they give people opportunities to just speak on a mic so that they can get reelected, get, the clips for their campaigns. But some of the more, like I spoke about, some of the more dangerous things that we know are actually going to move forward. Those are things that we really had to organize and fight around because they came out the gate banning DEI, anything that has anything to do with Black, minority. They were coming after it, trying to get rid of it. And I think, when you talk about intersectionality, we have to build those bricks one by one of all the different persuasions and perspectives because, DEI is first, gender affirming care is next, and then same-sex marriage could potentially be after that. It's like they're constantly trying to roll back the clock. So it really takes everybody in all areas fighting to protect each other. And I think that's what we saw. So, I mean, through that, and I'll let Lily kind of dive more into it around the equality conference. But the fact that all of this is going on and we were able to have the speaker acknowledge us as a formal caucus, I think that says something because it wasn't easy because he didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And we actually had to fight for that. But I'll let Lily kind of speak to that.
Really good explanation there, Marty Joe. So this year, one of the first bills that we heard, I sit on the Emerging Issues Committee, and one of the first, actually, there were two or three bills that night, that first night of committee of hearings, and one of the first ones was to remove the funding for DEI in our state programs. And so that was one of the first things we did was take away DEI from our state programs. And not only did it
I think everyone probably knows that stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, but just in case you didn't, that's what we're talking about. Yeah.
Thank you.
You bet.
And so since that happened pretty early on, and we have kind of like the very far right group called the Freedom Caucus. So we kind of wanted to balance that with a mechanism that existed that we could be already organized in an intersectional capacity because we recognize, and I'm going to say it, that fascism it works well when they get us to fight each other. So right now, Rep Crockett, Jasmine Crockett's been talking a lot about how they're using trans people and immigration to really wedge us, like, and pit us against each other. And so we wanted to say, you're not going to be able to do that with us. So a lot of credit to Rep Thomas. One of the things that you're missing out on tonight with not having Rep Wick here is Rep Wick is a librarian. And it is very important to them to have us formally recognized in the record, in the official records of the state of Missouri. Rep Wick has this sneaky suspicion that we've always been here, but every 100 years or so, they're able to wipe us off the books, you know? And so it feels brand new when we start talking about trans people and they're like, wait, oh my gosh, these people exist. Yeah, 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 always, have always been here. We just get a really, every once in a while, there's just a way to erase the record. So they want to make sure that we have permanent record. So the formation of the Intersectional Equality Conference was started at the beginning of legislative session this year, and we had to go through a formal process. So the Missouri Legislative Black Caucus is an official recognized caucus of the House. The Freedom Caucus is a recognized caucus of the House. The Irish American Caucus, the Labor Caucus, the Sportsman Caucus. So we have all these, like, already, it's kind of like if your company has an employee resource group, you know, like the people who are already like organized and you have like an affinity toward things. Well, we wanted to be organized and ready in an intersectional way so that we could speak against some of the more extreme um, attacks that we were seeing on Missourians from a federal level on issues that we care about. So we started, but it wasn't easy. We made a first plea, and it was pretty much, I don't know if it was erased or if it was thrown away or who knows. We dropped a letter off at the speaker's office early in January. And then Rep Thomas did a lot of, one of the ways that things get done is about relationships and having relationships with all different kinds of folks that work in the building is really important. And so Rep Thomas built some relationships with the chairs of some committees, and we were able to get approval and be formally recognized as an official intersectional equality conference of the Missouri House. And it's important as this is a history event, right? And we think about how JMO spoke 20 years ago at an event like this on this, and this isn't the first time, I'm sure. 20 years ago probably wasn't the first time, but maybe it was even a quieter space. So we are officially recognized in the journal, in the record. And when people look at what were we doing? What were we doing to fight back? What were we doing to stand up? This is one of the ways that we can formally stand up. And we would hold press conferences. Rep Thomas and I have actually been thinking about what else we can do, but we had a lot of our members, almost every member of the House of Representatives of the Democratic Caucus signed to be part of the Intersectional Equality Caucus. And what that also means is you're going to have a hard time dividing us then on issues. And that's going to be really important because we're hoping that we'll be able to flip some seats. And I believe we will be able to, and then they'll need us. Right now, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have what's called a Republican-held supermajority, which means they can kind of pass stuff without us being there. Now, there have been some holes in the seats, and there's a little bit of a math numbers game to our advantage where they don't necessarily have the super at the moment, but so they're going to start needing us to negotiate and to vote on things. And so we don't need our members being picked off over an issue as they're that's the thing about intersectionality. And that's how come Kimberly Crenshaw, back in the 80s, Black woman, she realized that the more identities that you have in marginalized, targeted populations, the more they stack on top of each other and the more that oppression just hits and hits and hits, which is, so we wanted to make sure that they couldn't pit us against each other. And this caucus is specifically organized to hold that ground and to be a little bit louder and to be a little bit progressive. If the Missouri House Dems, we had At the last, when all that stuff happened that JMO said, I had, the day before session ended, I got kicked off the Senate floor because I was so mad and the activists were chanting and I was chanting down there with them and, got kicked out of the Senate. And that's kind of the role I have. I'm kind of like in the streets and at the table kind of activist, and I'm going to leverage that. I'm a white woman with certain privilege, and I'm going to leverage it when I can. But I also know that some of my colleagues don't have that benefit. So the Equality Conference is a little bit to the lefty-ish, I guess, of the House, the Missouri House Dems. And so the last day of session, we had 3 press conferences. House Dems went, then the Black Caucus, and then the Intersectional Equality Caucus. And I said to everybody before I spoke, I was like, I'm saying fascists. So if you don't want to stand up here, that's cool. You don't have to, but I'm letting you know, I'm gonna say it. And so if you don't, because that's kind of the mechanism that we've created. But that doesn't mean that everybody has to be standing there all the time, but we're gonna say what needs to be said because we've kind of all agreed that that's who we're gonna be. Yeah. What do you got to say there,
Yeah, I want
Rep?
to add. Can I add to that real quick? Um, One thing I want to say, like, a benefit of like the equality conference, and it's like from the outside looking in, it's like what value does that have, right? But as she was mentioning, I think we got a lot of good press around the fact that we're fighting back because if we aren't unified, if we don't have that intersectionality, then it's a lot easier to attack those communities, right? Whereas when you look at it from gender identity perspective, sexual orientation, labor, African American, 5 fingers make a fist. So from their perspective, when they see Equality Conference and they see my name, Marty Joe Murray on there, and you see members of the Black Caucus on there, if you come for that community, then you're going to have issues pop up across that in that building across other issues, right? I serve on a budget committee, right?
Right.
And that thing is all about relationships. So it's like, from your perspective, if you want to attack Representative Wick Thomas or the community in Kansas City or in St. Louis, then you're going to have issues in other areas in the House of Representatives based on the members that are all on that list.
Yeah.
So I do think that was like a win for us because not only does it bring exposure to the things that they're doing, right? So that the community knows what's happening, but it puts a national spotlight on them because a lot of them are trying to run for other offices, whether that's Senate or, other powerful positions statewide. And us being able to say, hey, this just happened today in front of a lot of cameras that helps deter them from, passing more harmful legislation.
Yeah. And I do think that we have to make it known that we're going to have each other's backs. Because when we splinter, we get creamed every time. I'm part of the United Church of Christ Coalition, Open and Affirming Coalition for LGBTQ rights in the church and society. We had our national gathering in Kansas City before the General Synod happened in Kansas City back in July. We wanted to visit with local LGBT groups about how to we have all of these national clergy people coming, with their collars and their robes and their stoles and stuff. And we can have a press conference like against this abortion ban because the UCC supports legal abortion. We can have a press conference standing against using transgender kids as ballot candy with religious people saying it. Do you want us to do that? We thought that they would immediately run toward the idea. Instead, there were like 2 or 3 different transgender groups in town that did not get along. And if we invited one of them to come to our thing, the others were going to boycott it and not be part of it because they didn't get along. And there was just this movement drama stuff that took us weeks to navigate. And when we do that, when the real enemy, the folks that Kamala Harris used a spicy word to describe recently, when those folks who literally do want to kill us, a church in Indiana recently at a men's preaching night, the minister said that LGBT people should be killed. And then the church was asked for clarification because it was broadcast on their Facebook page, and they issued a written statement saying the Bible says that the government should execute these folks. There are folks who really do want to kill us. When we fight with each other, within the LGBTQ community, we make it easier for our enemies to win. So somehow we have to find ways to hold our noses and get along and remember who the real enemy is, the folks who are truly trying to kill us and to take away our liberties. So I would strongly advise that we think that through because we have been hurting ourselves with movement drama for way too long. Let's let's see what you all want to talk about. How about we turn to Q&A? And does anyone have a question or a comment that they'd like to make? Well, movement drama is when one transgender group says to the visiting United Church of Christ, we won't come to your conference if you have them there. That's just little, spiteful actions between each other. I got fired by a social justice organization because my board president and the board chair, the vice president, I'm sorry, were angry with me because I had stood up for us being part of a lawsuit about homeless kids. That was a law that we'd helped to win in the 1990s. And so we had every reason to be involved in it. It was not mission creep. It was very direct. It was part of our own history for us to defend this law. The board in the end voted 6-3 for us to become part of the lawsuit. We were dismissed from the lawsuit as like not having standing, but the fact that we did an amicus brief and all that kind of thing helped the homeless kids win their lawsuit. The president and the vice president were angry about it and maneuvered how to get me fired by not adding anybody new to the board until they got the board small enough that the few people that wanted to fire me could make that happen. That's movement drama. Why should social justice folks spend their time finagling stuff that's about a little petty grudge match about somebody? It hurt the movement in Missouri for me to be fired. That was a bad mistake. There was no need to do that. And so there often folks just get involved in all of these little grudge matches and spiteful jealousies and gossip behavior instead of keeping our eye on the prize, which is truly liberty and justice for all. Do we believe in that or not? Or is that what we're going to try to build? So that's what I mean by movement drama. Yep, go ahead.
And I guess from my perspective, like one ways that I've seen it as an ally is in the city of St. Louis, like we always have like such large pride events or protests. Like I always see St. Louis as being like one of the epicenters of civil unrest in today's day and age. But we'll see people come out in droves and numbers when it's around like abortion, women's rights, or even like the LGBTQIA plus community. But if there's a rally or something happens where we see the rate at which Black trans women are being murdered, we don't see the same number show up in those spaces. So it's like kind of unequally weighted in terms of like when people decide to show up. And when certain factions of the community are being attacked, not locking arms together to fight back.
Other questions? Feel free to raise your hand. I have a couple of questions. I'll ask one. Oh, do we have someone over here? Oh, well.
I just want to thank you for using the word fascism, for saying it.
Yeah,
because we need to say it.
we do.
We need to name, if we don't name it, it gives it more power.
Right. Yep. Yeah, what is happening is not normal. We should not pretend that it is, and it is fascism. That's right.
I don't know if this is a question exactly as much as an observation, but I think the fact that the groups to which we are opposed to so many things, it kind of backfires on them because you've got, environmentalists and immigration rights people and all these things that people believe in, and they're attacking such a wide span of people that they maybe without intending to create these coalitions against them. And I think that's a sign of hope, I believe.
I think there's huge potential there, but it has been working to do a shock and awe style attack on social justice since at least the 1990s. You know, this may have been happening before, but I'm old enough to have started to recognize it with Newt Gingrich in the 1990s with the contract with America, contract on America, as many of us called it. What happened is they hit everything all at once. So Marion Wright Edelman, who was then the CEO of the Children's Defense Fund, said it's 100 fronts war. And so if you were trying to make sure that children had Head Start or WIC, the Special Supplemental Nutrition Assistance for Women, Infants, and Children, or if you were trying to make sure low-income housing existed, or you were trying to protect clean water and air, or you were trying to fight for reproductive justice, or you were trying to fight for labor unions, you were so busy with the thing that's on your front burner, the things that's the mission of your organization, that you had to go at it full time, and you had no time for coalition work. And it has stopped incredible progress that we were making. This just constant full-fledged attack of throw it all at them, just, you know, everything at once. So the shock and awe methods that Karl Rove sort of perfected in the 1990s have been very effective, and that's why we need to band together, like the Equality Caucus, like the new. I just read the new mission statement of the Missouri Workers Center. Have you all read that? It just came in the email today, and I like wanted to cry reading it. They're like, they're going to build a multiracial labor movement. You know, I mean, this is what needs to happen: is that we stand together and not let the stuff that's divided us in the past divide us. So, yep.
I just want to also like thank you for the statement. And maybe we could talk about it, but on that, was it the last day, the rally? Was it the last day of session? September 10th?
Yeah, September 10th. A month ago today.
A month ago today. So we had a rally around like the fact that the governor called us back to try to get rid of our ability to, you know, fight back in terms of the initiative petition process. And when I went, like, so, you know, we always have advocacy days at the Capitol where people come in and, you know, I'm going to testify on the bill. I'm going to bring some folks who are going to talk about things. I mean, both sides. I mean, pro-life, pro-choice. And the diversity in the group and the sheer amount of people that were in the building that day. I mean, if you talk about intersectionality, if you talk about to your point, the repercussions of like all of these fights that they have and the people that they're constantly trying to suppress, like that was a day where I felt like, okay, this is about to turn and not in their favors. To the point where like it was so loud, I felt the floor shaking. So
yeah, if you've ever been in the Missouri Capitol, there's a rotunda on the first floor. And it's there on the second floor as well, and the third floor and the fourth floor. And normally on a big lobby day, that first floor rotunda is like full and spilled out and sitting on steps. But that was happening, and they were all looking down from the second floor rotunda and the third floor rotunda and the fourth floor rotunda. It was the biggest rally I've ever seen. It was so encouraging.
Oh, did you say something? I mean, yeah.
Oh, can you show us your wallpaper?
Oh, yeah. I wondered if that would be a thing. Okay.
That's
you
what it looked
it?
like.
No, I just got a text.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Can you see it?
Yeah. So people are rising up, and that's what's got to happen. We've got to keep that happening. October 18th is No Kings Day. Hopefully some of you will be doing something for that. I have my No Kings poster out in the trunk of my car right now. So we could do it tonight if you want. So
I had one of the questions up here I was going to say was for Representative Murray. What did your time at SIU teach you about politics and organizing?
I love that question. We can plug the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute. It's right over there. Go check them out. But it was everything for me. I mean, it was certainly the foundation because growing up, I didn't have anybody in my family in politics. I mean, I doubt my daddy has ever even voted in an election outside of Obama. So like politics was never really talked about in my family growing up. And it was like Michael Burrows. I don't know if he was formally a part of the institute at the time, but you know, just saw me, a dusty kid walking around campus, like, hey man, what are you doing with your life? He's like, you should come over. I want you to come with me. I want to go introduce you to someone at the Paul Simon Institute. I'm like, who is Paul Simon?
I love
He's like,
that
you don't know
guy.
who Paul Simon is? Like you go to SIU, Carbondale, you know who Paul Simon is. Like, come over here. So it really started there. I end up doing like the internship, the museo internship, and working at the Attorney General office, Lisa Madigan, as a intern. So they stuck me in the back room, and all I did was take calls from constituents about them being frustrated about tenant rights, or they having some issue with a business that they think owed them some money, and they don't have money for an attorney. So like that really laid the foundation for me in terms of like constituent services, outreach. And I was the student government. I was like in USG. So I represented a building that no longer exists on campus, so that's heartbreaking. But I was in Boomer Hall before they tore it down, so I like represented the Triads, University Park. So that's really where it started for me.
Marty was so excited when he found out that I was an SIU grad. I don't, I'm retired now. I'm 71. I retired from my last job was working for an independent living center on disability rights issues. And now that I'm retired, I'm board president of something called the Consumers Council of Missouri, and we fight for lower utility bills. So this year there was a horrible piece of utility legislation, and I suddenly found myself not being paid for it, but going to the Capitol frequently to testify and to go, make the rounds of people that I thought I might convince to vote no on this thing. So I got to know Marty better at that time, and he was like, use my office. My office is your office, and I've really taken advantage of that. But it's more of that intersectional organizing is both Lily and Marty voted no on Senate Bill 4, which did pass. The governor signed it. The governor had been given $600,000 by the investor-owned monopoly utility companies in his gubernatorial primary. And interestingly enough, this is a priority bill that he manages to get through and signed by April the 9th. Is there a connection? I wonder about that. But this bill will probably raise folks' utility bills by about $1,100 in Missouri if you have monopoly utility companies as your source. Some of you all have a co-op, which is a little better situation, but a lot of folks are trapped. It's not like they can go get their power somewhere else. Yeah.
Hi. Hi, Lily. It's so good to see you again.
Hey, good to see you.
That's so great. I'm like, so I'm Jeannie Ravenscraft, and I'm so honored to be here. I have a question I work in education. I'm also an activist, and there's just seems to be a fine line of what can I do, and then also what can I do that will really make an impact, and then also just not just be like, for show. Additionally, I will say that in this climate, I've become a little bit scared. I have seen other educators get fired for saying things like, that they didn't disagree with Charlie, whatever.
Yeah.
I just don't even want to say his last name because I
Right.
don't like him.
Yeah.
So, at one point I had put something and then I took it down, and I was just like, this is creating real fear
Yeah.
to just be authentic in
Yes.
in my passion. So
Yeah.
I don't know, it's that fine line of what can I do that's going to make a real difference, but also what can I do that's not going to lose my job.
Yes. Yeah.
So
We actually have had people voicing prayers for teachers and prayers of the people at my church for several weeks now. My pastor's wife is a teacher, so they are extremely familiar with the challenges of teachers who actually want to like honor the pronouns the kids ask them to say, and you can be punished for that, as a teacher these days, unfortunately. It's a really challenging time. I think being someone that listens to students and takes them seriously matters a whole lot. I think remembering what your constitutional rights are and demanding that they be acted upon is something that you should aspire to. It may get you fired, but you will be fired wrongly. And some things have been done to me wrongly. And guess what? it wasn't the end of the story. You know, the folks from Good Shepherd know that they did not ordain me in 1987. They kicked me out. But the fight about me lasted a long, long time, and it got other people ordained later. So the fights matter, and don't comply in advance, as everybody's saying these days. Fight it, and remember that you do have, even teachers have freedom of speech rights. Now, parsing how to do that is of course hard, because you have to think about, how do I create an atmosphere that's welcoming and open to everyone's viewpoints, including ones I don't agree with, you know. But it's worth thinking through those situations and standing up for your own constitutional rights. What do you all think?
So I know Lily is gonna go off. She's my activist. But I wanted to share some perspective, because I can feel you 100% in terms of like that fear, right? It's so often when we have to like vote on issues, certain issues are black and white. Like I know that how, like Senate Bill 4, like I knew how I was gonna vote on that. But when it's those things where the law isn't yet really defined around it, or it's like going into like morality, you know, as far as like how a society shifting, like those are the types of questions and like the stances that are really hard to like be vocal about. And what I would say, like the first thing you said out of your mouth when you introduced yourself, you said, I'm an activist. So I really think you have to be confident in terms of like, this is a question I always ask myself, is like, uh, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when we look back in the times that we live in right now, and before my daughter was born, I would say, well, when she asked me, Dad, what did you do during that time? I wanted to be able to have something to tell her, you know? So like when you have those moments where you're not quite sure, you want to walk back your statements, I think just try to take solace in the fact of like, you're doing what's right. And even if the school retaliates against you, or people on the opposite end might, become violent, or whatever the case may be, like being warm, being able to wrap your arms around the fact that you're doing what's right in this time, hopefully that can give you a little bit of courage. You know.
Hi, Jeannie. I can hear the like struggle, to figure out what the right next step is. And I think you're not alone in that. A lot of folks are trying to figure that out, because while the Constitution and First Amendment rights sound great in theory, I feel like those are being operationalized in whole new ways. And so we don't really know what we have anymore. Do we have the freedom of speech that we once thought we had? Do we have the Constitution as we understand it? And so I think those are, you know, that's real. And I had a friend who was the attorney for the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education here in Missouri. She was one of their attorneys, and she posted something. So one of her high school friends saw it, took a screenshot, sent it to her boss. She got called in on a Monday. She texted me. This literally just happened. She texted me, and we're like, oh God, they're not going to do anything. By Wednesday, she was let go. So Desi in Missouri let go one of their attorneys for a freedom of speech issue. I don't know who among us is safe. Now, you're in a different state, so it could be different, but until like I don't know. Are they worried about me right now? This, loudmouth activist legislator from Missouri? Maybe not today, but they're indicting the attorney general of the state of New York. So like we don't know. So you have to, and I had this conversation this week. I was at dinner with the board chair for the Metro Trans Umbrella Group. And this is a community organization that serves trans people in Missouri and St. Louis. And the dinner was really to talk about like, because they went dark this month. They don't want to do their open hours right now because of having vulnerable people sitting at a very marked address in the middle of the city. They're not dropping into St. Louis right now like they're dropping into Rogers Park. But I talked to one of the alderwomen from up there today, and so that's what's happening in like north of where you are right now. So I don't know what to tell you. What I can say is what I talked to them about is we as a community, we have to have conversations about what our role is. And is it the same? So for me, I doubled down. Fighting fascists has done nothing but liberate me. I'm like, let's go, because I know I'm on lists, but I don't have kids and I don't have a dog right now. And I'm actually, single. And I tell my mom, I know what I'm doing. And I'm sorry, mom, that I'm on these lists, but some of us aren't going to make it. Like, I recognize the role that I have taken. I stood up to the Trump administration during redistricting. We sat on the floor for 123 hours. That put me on lists that I wasn't on weeks before, when it comes to standing up. And he's got lists of people that he's saying we're retribution, So like, I don't know to tell you. I think what it's important is, as a family, as a community, you talk to your loved ones and you say, what is my role now? What would happen if they fired me? My friend Lindsay lost her job, and I'm sure it looked really like she was a breadwinner. She's a lesbian, her and her family, like she's got kids, and then she landed pretty well. She landed actually better. So it was like, go ahead, fire me then. I'll land over here better. So I can't say that would be your experience. Um, but we have to have these conversations about what's our role, how visible. Do I double down? Do I go more incognito? Fascism wants us to hide, but I'm getting louder, but that doesn't mean that everybody can. So I feel like hopefully that helped, even if it's just like you're not alone and trying to figure out what to do next. Talk to your loved ones about the role that you can play, and if you can go louder and be that person for your students, or is it something else because of safety and security? And those are, I think, only questions you can have as a family.
And I also want to add, because I think there is value in like organizing and being an activist within the system as well. So like, certainly like, you know, civil disobedience and like that end of the spectrum of activism. But what we saw in terms of like that rally that day was powerful. So like, it's like, what are your skill sets? Like, if you are good at getting people together, if you can make phone calls in like swing areas, like swing districts, because we got the midterms coming up. I think there's still a lot of things you can still do to funnel some of that energy. If like, you feel like your current environment might be a little bit dangerous. So it's a lot of different things.
So that they could do it. You walk, and I'll be like, let me tell you. It's not like sometimes an old back conversation and dialogue. So I'm trying little things, little tiny like underground activism, so that they could be like, go forth and give your knowledge. But at the same time, when I'm watching this, oh my gosh, this is really happening. People are losing jobs, and it's just frightening. At the same time, I do that. So I'm like, no.
Yeah. It's a very frightening time. Yeah.
Mhm.
You're welcome.
It's a bit of a direction change, but I had a question for Marty, Joe, and JMO. What about St. Louis reminds you of Carbondale?
Ah. Is there anything?
Look, I was hoping you.
Uh, Gosh, the thing that struck me when I got to Carbondale, when I got to St. Louis, was that the LGBT community was so splintered there, because we had seemed pretty united here. But I also wasn't as aware back when I lived here as I am now, and there may have been undercurrents that I didn't even perceive, for all I know. For one thing, the community was really white when I was here. And so where were the LGBT folk of color, and why weren't we hanging out together? And I didn't notice that so much then, because I had not come into an understanding of how racism is the original sin of the United States, and that we have not done much toward righting old wrongs and changing attitudes. So we may not have been nearly as united as I thought we were, but mainly I noticed what was different about St. Louis, which is folks did not seem to get along in the unified way that I was used to in Carbondale. Carbondale felt like, that Carbondale was this little sanctuary for all of us who were rural kids. I grew up at Rural Route 1, Elizabethtown, Illinois, down in Hardin County, at the southeast tip of the state. Very rural. I grew up on Joe Cap Mountain, like my mom, my dad, and me. That's it. We could see my Uncle Nance's place way over there on the other hill. And so I came from a rural area, and Carbondale felt like sanctuary. It felt like a place where I could be who I really was, and Karen there, her cousin Dee was my best friend in school, was a little effeminate, I thought, gay boy at the time, came out in the last 10 years of her life as a transgender person and lived that way till she died. There we were, these rural kids. That's why I sent the press release, to the Hardin County Independent when I was elected, if there were any LGBT kids in school, I wanted them to read about somebody that made it, that got elected somewhere, because you don't hear those stories much, and I wanted to make sure those stories happen. I guess the one thing that I could say is somewhat the same about St. Louis as Southern Illinois is an appreciation for nature, for green space. We have lots of parks in St. Louis, lots of attention to botanical gardens and just beautiful green space and areas that are tended for the sake of things like preserving butterflies, and there's a lot of interest in natural beauty in St. Louis. That's somewhat similar. I've actually picked to go to seminary at Eden Theological Seminary in Webster Groves because there was so much green space there. Because I had gone to visit the seminary in Chicago, and it was like concrete for miles, and I was like, I can't I can't live where there's no green, and there was lots of grass and trees where I went to.
I think mine is going to be a little bit less is like nice. I feel like the similarities that I see between St. Louis and Carbondale is like how segregated it is, right? So like when I was on campus, you have your cliques, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I lived in the triads or like the towers, but like people that lived like Thompson Point, I don't know if they call it that anymore, but like by the lake, they had a totally different perspective on like what campus life was like. I remember my first roommate, he's like a tall country white guy, fishing poles and stuff, in this room. And he left to go move into Thompson Point. But like the way that the cliques and the groups, unless you like deliberately go outside of your space to go meet people that like are different than you, I feel like that's the same way for St. Louis. So like, depending on the neighborhood you stay in or what part of town you live in, where you go have drinks at, like I think you'll see different people. I think the diversity is there. So like if you look at like going through the student center, like I think we have those spaces in St. Louis, but I think you have to be deliberate in terms of like, getting a different perspective.
Thank you. Other questions? I did have a question for Lily. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about your time with Promo. What is Promo? What was your time like? Moving from being on the advocacy and lobbying sort of side of things to being in legislating at a time where there's this how do we even really describe that, right?
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for that. So I actually started as the lobbyist for Promo in March of 2016. So, at that point, we had just had marriage equality across the land, the Supreme Court decision in 2015. And it was almost immediately then that next legislative session that the anti-LGBTQ bills started. First, they were trying to undo marriages. And that was the 2016 legislative session in Missouri was kind of the first real battle that we had over LGBTQ equality of this iteration of existence. And I was the second day on in mid-March when we entered what was at the time a 40 some odd hour filibuster to stop a bill that would have added like a religious freedom component to identity to marriage. It was a bad bill. It was directly attacking LGBTQ people. So that was like my second day on the job, and I didn't know hardly anything, and here we were fighting this battle. So let this be a lesson. You don't have to be the expert. Sometimes you just need to be in the space and do your best, because we don't always know. We haven't had this before. So I started then in March during kind of the first battle. So I got a pretty good idea of what it could look like. And then, of course, November of 2016, the first Trump 1 administration, and things shifted almost immediately. I had social work practicum students that I had documenting websites in case they decided to ban or burn the books, which was like eliminating government websites with our information. This has been going on in Missouri from my perspective since the first administration. We worked so hard at Promo. Not only did we do legislative work and worked in the Capitol to defeat, that first 2017 session, then we had at minimum 35 anti-LGBTQ bills that year. And then by 2025 legislative session, we had the most anti-LGBTQ bills filed of any state in the country. We not only did do legislative work at Promo, but we also did cultural competency trainings. So we went all over and we worked to institutionalize trans healthcare, trans medicine. We had children's clinics at our hospitals, at our big world-renowned medical facilities where they are treating our children and they're giving them the tools and the resources that the families need to take care of their families. And sometimes I feel like, well, what were we kidding ourselves to institutionalize our healthcare and our policies? And the jury's still out for me on that one. But what I know now is that we can't stop when it's good. So then when we had, I called the Obama years, like all we did was win and it was great. And then Trump, we started losing things. We're losing ground. And then during the Biden years, we didn't really lose ground, but we kind of like got a little comfortable. And so we have to go, if we can't do big P policy, because we're not going to be able to, then we have to do little, like on like little P or organizational or back to the community level. So even though my work with Promo started back in 2016, we've been kind of doing the same. I've been doing the same work just in different roles as the manager of public policy. And then I went to work with the Metro Trans Umbrella Group, and I was doing like community building and policy work and facilitation of their support groups and helping to run our community center. And now I'm back to like being a legislator, but I'm still, because I did so much organizing. And before that, I was the bartender at the gay bar. So like I've been building relationships with this community for 25 years. And now as the legislator, I get access to spaces that I think I wouldn't have because, trusting politicians is, that could be a whole keynote. But because I have a built-in relationship already, because people have seen me fighting and in this with them, my role with Promo, I'm still affiliated. Like, the executive director and I talk, Katie's my constituent, lives down the block, like we are in community. And I think that's one of the biggest added values to having a legislator who's out and open and who's so visible is because I've been coming up with everybody this whole time. And so I already have the trust of folks who are scared. So when I ran, I leveraged the rainbow. I was like, we're putting those in every yard. I want Missourians, I want St. Louisans, I want this district to know that they're going to have somebody who is there to fight for them from this community. And so promo afforded me that opportunity to get into the Capitol and see what it's like. But it's a totally different job from activist, advocate to legislator. Like,
Yeah.
whew, so different. I thought I knew. I didn't know nothing. Okay. I didn't.
You reminded me of a great story from Promo's history. That's a story of international intersectional organizing. So let me share that real quick. Are we about out of time? Are we getting close?
We're doing good.
Okay. So I think this was the 1990s. It will surprise you to find out, given all that you've heard about Missouri, is that Missouri actually has a hate crimes law that's protective of sexual orientation and gender identity. Now, how did that happen? Here's how it happened. Good organizing. There's three things that you have to do to win. You have to grow your numbers. That is, you build a sustainable base. So you got to keep growing the number of people coming into your movement. You can't just have a little click and leave it at that. You got to attract new people and grow it. Then secondly, those people that you've got to get them to take action together at key moments. So if there's a hearing on a bill, if they're if the governor signs something and it's wrong, you need to have like a public rally, press releases, things like that. You want to take key action together at key moments. Taking action together, around like budget hearings, that kind of thing. And then the third thing you want to do is be changing the narratives. You want to get the public to talk about your issue the same way you do, to use your language and to tell the story of personally impacted people so that it's a really informed viewpoint that they're doing. So in the late 1990s, Promo had a sponsor in the House and in the Senate for a hate crimes law that was inclusive of sexual orientation and gender identity. And they were like, well, we don't think we can win this. And so they counted, and this is called a whip count. You want to find out, do you have the votes that you need to win or not? They had the votes they needed in the Senate, but they did not in the House. There were 16 votes short in the House. And so they were trying to decide, at that point, there was a Democratic majority in the House and a Democratic speaker. And the Promo director went to see the speaker, and the speaker said, now I can let you have some floor debate, but you say that you don't have the votes to win it. So do you want the floor debate or not? Because it's going to fail if we bring it to a vote. So if you had the floor debate, the media might cover it, educate the public a little bit. You could, debate it for an hour, and then we'll just lay it over. That's the kind of stuff that happens, right? Those kind of things happen sometimes. So Jeff said, yeah, let's have an hour of floor debate, and then we'll just lay it over. And so the debate started about this hate crimes law. And one of the white suburban legislators, a Republican, went to the mic and said, we don't need this stupid hate crimes law about gay and lesbian people. We don't need that. In fact, we don't need ethnic intimidation laws anymore. None of that stuff is happening. And immediately it was like, whoosh, the room blew up, right? Every African-American legislator went to the mic and said, we don't need ethnic intimidation laws anymore. There's no more racism. How come I get followed around in the store when I go shopping? How come I get stopped for driving while black? And every single African-American went to the mic and told their stories, and it scared the snot out of the legislators who were prepared to vote no on this hate crimes bill. And it became apparent that some of the no votes would be yes votes if you took the vote right now. And they took the vote, and it passed in the House, passed in the Senate, and went to the governor's desk and was signed into law by Mel Carnahan. So when you stand by each other and you say, hey, I'm going to stand up for your rights because I want people standing up for my rights, you can make some progress sometimes. So good on Missouri for that day in Missouri history. This is the good thing about being invited to LGBT plus History Month when you're my age, is I've lived through a lot of it. So I have a bunch of stories to tell you.
I appreciate it. You bought me a couple of minutes to go run out there and do something real quick. So, well, thank you for let's give a round of applause for our speakers today. I really feel like the message that you brought here today resonates with our theme for the month, which is history will repeat, we won't retreat. So
Yes.
thank you. We appreciate it.